I have seen a lot in my years on the bench, and I still remember the feeling in the room that morning, like the air itself had decided to hold its breath. The courtroom wasn't just full, it was packed, in that way that tells you people smelled drama before the first word was spoken. Strangers sitting shoulder to shoulder, phones tucked away but eyes hungry, the kind of quiet that buzzes. When the bailiff called the case, Marisol Vega versus Kelsey Hartman, a wave of whispering rolled through the gallery like wind through dry grass. Names don't usually cause that reaction, but this one did, because weddings do that to people. They turn ordinary disputes into open wounds. And when you add money, ego, and a once-in-a-lifetime moment that can't be recreated, people don't just want a verdict, they want blood. I looked down at my file and saw the same words I've seen 1,000 times, dressed up in different pain: breach of contract, fraud, emotional distress. Then I looked up. At the plaintiff's table sat Marisol Vega, 34, posture stiff, like she'd forced her spine to stay upright for weeks. Her hands were folded, but her fingers kept pressing into each other, as if she was trying to keep her own shaking contained. A simple navy blouse, no jewelry worth talking about, and eyes that looked like they'd slept in tiny pieces instead of full nights. Across from her was Kelsey Hartman, 29, hair perfectly curled, soft makeup, and the kind of outfit that screams, "I'm camera ready," even when I'm not behind the lens. She sat with her shoulders relaxed, a small, practiced smile at the corners of her mouth. Not smug exactly, more like confident that charm would do what truth could not. I've learned to pay attention to confidence. Real confidence is quiet. Fake confidence is loud without making sound. I flipped the first page of the file and spoke into the room with the kind of calm that makes people nervous. "Ms. Vega," I said, "you're suing for $12,500. You say the defendant took your wedding photography money, failed to deliver your photos, and then sold some of them online. Is that what you're claiming?" Marisol's throat moved as she swallowed. "Yes, Your Honor." I turned to the defendant. "Ms. Hartman, do you deny that?" Kelsey lifted her chin slightly. "I deny the selling part," she said smoothly, "and I deny that I failed to deliver. There were complications." Complications. That word is the perfume people spray on wrongdoing to make it smell like an accident. "Let's start simple," I said. "Were you hired as the wedding photographer?" "Yes." "Did you take a deposit?" "Yes." "How much?" Kelsey blinked once, as if numbers were beneath her. $4,000. I looked down. "And the remaining balance?" $6,200, she answered. I tapped the paper with my pen. "So you received $10,200 total." Marisol flinched at the number, like it hurt to hear. Kelsey nodded, like she was confirming a dinner reservation. "And," I continued, "you were supposed to deliver edited photos within 6 weeks. Kelsey's smile tightened. "That was the estimate. It was the contract," I corrected. Words matter in court. A small ripple moved through the gallery. I could feel it, the audience picking a side already. They always do. They think they can smell the villain in the first 10 seconds. Sometimes they're right. Sometimes they're just entertained. I looked at Marisol again. "Tell me what happened," I said. Her voice came out careful at first, like she was walking across ice. "Your Honor, I hired her because her website was beautiful. She promised timeless luxury photos. She promised she would personally shoot the whole day. She promised a sneak peek within 72 hours. Kelsey rolled her eyes just slightly, so small she probably thought no one saw it. I saw it. Marisol continued. "My wedding was on October 12th. The ceremony started at 4. She arrived late, not a little late, 45 minutes late. My bridesmaids had to start getting ready without her." "Did she tell you she'd be late?" I asked. "No, she stopped responding that morning. Then she showed up and acted like it was normal, like I was dramatic for asking." I turned to Kelsey. "Were you late?" Kelsey opened her hands in a helpless gesture. "There was traffic. Phoenix traffic is insane." "It's Arizona," I said flatly. "Traffic exists. Time still exists, too. You plan." The gallery snickered. Kelsey's eyes flicked toward them, annoyed. Marisol's hands squeezed tighter. "And then," she said, "she didn't stay." Kelsey sat up. "I stayed." Marisol's voice sharpened. and that's when the tiredness turned into steel. You left before the first dance. A hush. That's not a small thing at a wedding. That's like a surgeon leaving before the stitches. I watched Kelsey's face, just long enough to catch the microsecond of panic before it became a smile again. I did not leave, Kelsey said. I stepped out. For 3 hours? Marisol asked, voice cracking. Kelsey turned to me. Your Honor, I had an emergency, a family emergency. I leaned back. All right, we're going to slow this down, because in court, when people start saying emergency, it usually means the truth is about to run. I flipped a page. Ms. Vega, I said, what did you receive after the wedding? Marisol's eyes watered, but she kept speaking. Nothing. No sneak peek, no texts, no email. I reached out. She said she was in the middle of edits. Then she said her computer crashed. Then she said the files were corrupted. Then she said she'd refund part of it. And did she refund? Marisol's laugh was short and bitter. No. Kelsey's fingers tapped the table, just once, like she was trying to remind herself she was still in control. I turned to Kelsey. Is it true you told her your computer crashed? Kelsey nodded. Yes, my hard drive failed, and you didn't have backups. Kelsey's voice stayed sweet. I usually do. This time, it was a perfect storm. Perfect storm, I repeated deadpan. For you. The audience made that low, ooh sound people make when they sense a line landed. I lifted my hand slightly, and the room quieted. Ms. Vega, I said, you also claim she sold some of your photos online. Marisol's mouth trembled. Yes, explain. Marisol reached into her folder with shaking hands and pulled out printed pages. She runs a print shop on her site. She sells styled wedding shots. I was scrolling because I still hoped maybe she posted something, and I saw it. My bouquet, my husband's hands, a photo of my mother crying. It was cropped, but it was ours. She put it under Autumn Romance Collection and charged $49 per print. The courtroom reacted. Sharp inhales, a few angry whispers. Kelsey's face changed. Not much, but enough. I didn't sell her photos, Kelsey said quickly. Those are stock images. I buy licenses. I stared at her. Stock images of the plaintiff's mother crying. Kelsey blinked. I mean, wedding moments are universal. It could look like, stop, I said. Calm, not loud, just final. Silence dropped like a curtain. This is the moment people don't understand about my job. They think judging is shouting. It isn't. The most powerful thing you can do in a courtroom is make someone realize their words just died in the air. I looked at Marisol. Did you bring proof those photos are yours? Marisol nodded and slid forward another sheet. Yes, the venue posted a clip the next day, and her watermark is on it. Kelsey's lawyer, young man, too slick for his own good, cleared his throat. Your Honor, we object to... I held up a finger without even looking at him. You will sit, I said. When I want you, I'll look at you. He sat. Marisol's voice softened, and it was that softness that made it worse. That was my wedding, she said. My mother died 3 weeks later. That was the last day she looked happy. The gallery went quiet in a different way, not entertained, uncomfortable, because grief makes people feel guilty for watching. Kelsey stared at her nails like she was bored. I noticed that too, and I felt something cold settle in my chest. Miss Hartman, I said, you're going to answer my questions directly. No speeches. She smiled politely. Of course. Did you personally shoot the wedding start to finish? Yes. Were you the only photographer there? Kelsey hesitated. Just half a beat. I had an assistant. Marisol snapped her head up. You never told me that. Kelsey shrugged. It's standard. Clients don't need every operational detail. I turned my head slightly and looked at her as if she'd just spoken in a language I didn't recognize. Clients don't need to know who is capturing their wedding day. Kelsey's smile faltered. It was still under my brand. Ah, I said, under your brand. Like a label you slap on something and pretend you made it. The gallery murmured again. I looked down. Miss Vega, I said, did you ever meet this assistant? No, she said. I saw a man with a camera for maybe 10 minutes. Kelsey told me he was just carrying equipment. Kelsey's cheeks tightened. He was carrying equipment. And filming, Marisol shot back. I lifted my hand again. Enough, I said. We're going to evidence, because this case is starting to smell like a lie wrapped in good lighting. I turned to the bailiff. Bring me Exhibit A. He placed it in front of me. A printed contract with signatures. I read aloud. Delivery within 6 weeks. Sneak peek within 72 hours. Photographer remains on site for full event coverage from 2 p.m. to 10 p.m. I looked at Kelsey. Did you leave before 10? Kelsey swallowed. I left briefly. Briefly is not 3 hours, I said. And briefly is not leaving before the first dance. Kelsey leaned forward, voice suddenly sharper. Your Honor, I had a panic attack. I'm human. The room shifted. That line was designed to turn her into a victim. I've seen that move. It's an old move. What time did you have this panic attack? I asked. Kelsey blinked. Around 7. What time is the first dance scheduled? Marisol answered immediately. 7:30. Kelsey's eyes flicked at her. Convenient, I said softly. Kelsey stiffened. It wasn't convenient. Then prove it, I said. Kelsey opened her mouth, then shut it. I turned to the bailiff. Exhibit B. He placed printed text messages in front of me. I scanned them. Marisol. Hi, just checking in. Any sneak peek? Kelsey. Editing nonstop. You're going to love them. Marisol. It's been 3 weeks. Kelsey. My computer crashed. Hard drive died. I'm devastated. Then a week later. Kelsey. I can refund $1,000 as a courtesy. Marisol. No, I want my photos. Then 2 days later. Kelsey. You're being aggressive. I'm trying. I looked up. Miss Hartman, I said, you call her aggressive for asking for what she paid for. Kelsey's voice rose slightly. Because she was threatening my business. Marisol's eyes flashed. I said I'd leave a review. Kelsey leaned in, suddenly angry. A defamatory review. I stared at her. Defamatory means false, I said. If it's true, it's called a warning. Silence. Kelsey's lawyer tried to jump in. Your Honor, no, I said. Not yet. I held up a third exhibit. Exhibit C, I said. A screenshot from the defendant's website, Autumn Romance Collection. The bailiff turned the monitor so the room could see. The gallery leaned forward. I did too. There it was, a beautiful photo of a bouquet held against a white dress. Marisol's bouquet. Kelsey's watermark in the corner. Kelsey straightened, voice fast. That's not her bouquet. It's a prop bouquet from a styled shoot. A styled shoot, I repeated.
Yes, influencer content, totally unrelated.
I stared at the photo again and then looked at Marisol. Do you have proof that bouquet is yours? Marisol nodded, almost shaking as she pulled out a receipt.
I bought it from a florist in Scottsdale. Same custom wrap, same charm.
She handed it over. A tiny gold charm shaped like a crescent moon. I looked back at the screen, zoomed in. There it was, same charm. I didn't need to raise my voice. I didn't need to slam anything. The truth was doing the work for me. I turned to Kelsey. How did a prop bouquet have the plaintiff's custom charm on it? Kelsey's face went pale. Her eyes darted, searching for a new lie.
I buy charms in bulk for props,
she said quickly. In the shape of a crescent moon, with the initials M and D engraved, I asked. Marisol's husband's name was Daniel. The initials sat right there. The room went dead silent. Kelsey's lawyer leaned toward her, whispering frantically, but she didn't move. This is the moment I always recognize, the moment the story in someone's head collapses and they're left standing in the rubble, trying to pretend it was a house all along. I let the silence stretch. 2 seconds. 3. In that silence, Kelsey's breathing got louder. Then I said, low and cold, Miss Hartman, stop lying. Kelsey's eyes watered instantly, and for a second, she looked like she might finally become human. Then she did what people like her often do when cornered. She got angry. This is unfair, she snapped. I work hard. People don't understand the pressure. Pressure, I said, doesn't make you steal. Marisol's voice broke. You stole my mother's last smile. The gallery shifted. Someone whispered, oh my God. Kelsey's jaw trembled. I didn't steal it, she said. Things got out of hand. Let's talk about out of hand, I said. I picked up another document. Miss Vega, I asked, you said she had an assistant. Yes. What's his name? Marisol shook her head. I didn't know. I turned to Kelsey. What is his name? Kelsey hesitated again. Ethan. Full name. Ethan Cole. I nodded, already reading, because my clerk had pulled something during the break that Kelsey didn't know existed. Interesting, I said, because the venue provided security footage. Kelsey froze. I looked at the bailiff. Play it. The screen switched to grainy footage of the reception. Timestamp, 6:52 p.m. Kelsey walking out with her camera bag. Not panicked, not dizzy, not crying, walking like someone leaving a job early. Then, 2 minutes later, a man with a camera followed her out. Ethan. They got into the same car and drove away. The gallery erupted in whispers. Kelsey's lawyer shot up. Your Honor, I held up my hand. Sit down, I said. You're not driving this. He sat. Kelsey's mouth opened, but no sound came out. I tilted my head. Panic attack, I said softly. In the passenger seat? Kelsey's eyes filled with tears. Yes, she whispered. Then why did you text her that night saying you stayed the whole event? I asked. Kelsey's lips pressed together. I didn't want her to be upset. You lied to protect yourself, I corrected. Marisol's shoulders shook as she tried not to cry, but it broke through anyway. Quiet, exhausted sobs. I watched her, and I've seen that kind of crying before. That's not dramatic crying. That's the sound of someone finally realizing they were not crazy for being hurt. I leaned forward. Miss Hartman, I said, you were paid for a service. You didn't deliver it. Then you used parts of it to make money. Kelsey shook her head. I didn't make money. I didn't blink. You listed it for sale. That doesn't mean it's sold. Then show me your sales records, I said. Kelsey's lawyer jumped in again, voice quick. Your Honor, this is small claims. We are not required. I cut him off. You are required to answer questions. And you're required to tell the truth. You're acting like the rules are optional. They are not. Kelsey's eyes flicked down. She whispered something to her lawyer. He sighed, defeated, and slid a printout forward. Sales records. I scanned. 1 sale, then 2, then 5, then 20. Total, $1,176 in print sales from Autumn Romance Collection in the last month. I looked up slowly. Kelsey's face crumpled. Marisol's mouth fell open. The gallery sounded like a wave. I held the paper up slightly. You sold them, I said, voice calm. Not once, multiple times. Kelsey started crying now, loud, messy. I needed the money, she sobbed. I have rent, I have bills. Marisol's eyes blazed through tears. I'm a nurse, she said. You think I don't have bills? I worked overtime to pay you. Overtime, while planning a wedding, while my mother was sick. That word, mother, hung in the air like a bruise. Kelsey wiped her face and did something that told me everything about her character. She tried to minimize it. I didn't think it would matter, she said. It's just photos. I leaned in. And that, I said softly, is why you're here. Because decent people understand that the value of something is not always measured in dollars. It's measured in meaning. Kelsey's lawyer cleared his throat, trying one last lifeline. Your Honor, she's offered a partial refund. How much, I asked. He hesitated. 1,000. I stared at him like he just offered someone a Band-Aid for a broken leg. She took $10,200, I said. She didn't deliver. She sold the images. And you're offering 1,000. He opened his mouth. I raised my hand. No, don't. I turned to Kelsey again. Where are the original files? Kelsey shook her head. They're gone. The drive, I cut in. Stop, I said. I don't believe you. Kelsey froze. The room froze. Hard drives don't fail and then magically create print-ready images for your website, I said. So either you have the files or you had them long enough to export what you needed. Kelsey whispered, barely audible. I copied some before. Before what? I asked. She swallowed. Before I deleted the folder. Marisol let out a sound, half sob, half gasp. You deleted them? She said, voice breaking. Kelsey nodded, crying harder. I panicked. She was threatening reviews. I didn't want my business ruined. I stared at her. So you ruined her memories instead. Kelsey's face collapsed. And that's when I knew my ruling. I didn't need more speeches. I didn't need more drama. I had what mattered. A contract, a payment, a breach, proof of misuse, and an admission. I straightened the papers neatly because my job is not to enjoy anyone's downfall. My job is to correct wrongdoing. I looked directly at Marisol. "Miss Vega," I said, "I'm sorry about your mother." Her eyes lifted to me, wet and stunned. Then I turned to the defendant. "Miss Hartman," I said, "you had one job, preserve her wedding day. You treated it like content." Kelsey sobbed. "I didn't mean to." "Yes, you did," I said calmly. "You meant to protect yourself, and you did it at her expense." The gallery went silent again, waiting. I paused, not for drama, but because words should land clean. "Here is my ruling," I said. I glanced down at the damages. "You will refund the full amount paid, $10,200. Kelsey's shoulders jolted. "You will also pay $1,176, the amount you earned selling the images." Her lawyer looked down like he already knew. "And," I continued, "you will pay $1,124 in additional damages for the cost of hiring a replacement photographer to do a redo portrait session plus the filing fee." That brought us to $12,500. Kelsey's mouth fell open. "I can't." "You can," I said, "because actions have costs. This is one of them." I leaned forward slightly, and I'm going to be clear. This is civil court. I'm not a criminal judge. But what you admitted, deleting paid-for files, selling someone's private images, may have legal consequences beyond this room. Ms. Vega is free to pursue that if she chooses. Kelsey's lawyer stood up fast. "Your Honor, we object." I looked at him. "No," I said. "Sit down." He sat. Kelsey stared at the table like it might forgive her. Marisol covered her mouth and cried, quiet, shaking sobs of relief, mixed with grief, because money doesn't bring a mother back, and it doesn't rewind a wedding. But it does something else. It acknowledges wrongdoing. And sometimes for someone who's been dismissed and minimized, acknowledgement is the first step to healing. I picked up my pen. "Miss Hartman," I said, "you want to be trusted with people's milestones? Then act like someone who deserves it." Kelsey whispered through tears, "I'm sorry." I didn't soften. "Sorry is not a business plan," I said, "and sorry doesn't restore what you erased." I looked back at Marisol. "Judgment for the plaintiff," I said firmly, $12,500. Then I added, not as a speech, but as a truth that needed to be said. Weddings don't just capture love. They capture the people who show up for it. You took that from her and tried to turn it into profit. That is not a mistake. That is a choice. The gallery was quiet. Then someone started to clap, softly. It spread for a second like a wave, then stopped when the bailiff shifted. I didn't need applause. I needed understanding. As they gathered their papers, I watched Marisol stand. Her shoulders were still heavy, but she was no longer collapsed under confusion. She walked out of that courtroom with something she didn't have when she came in: a record, a ruling, a line drawn. And as for Kelsey, she walked out smaller than she entered, not because I humiliated her, but because truth took back the space she had been occupying with excuses. If this were the internet, I already knew what would happen. A clip of the bouquet charms zoomed in, a side-by-side of hard drive failed next to print shop sales, $1,176. 1,000 comments arguing about ethics, contracts, and whether photographers should ever be trusted. But in my courtroom, it wasn't about likes or shares. It was about accountability. And that day, accountability showed up on time. Court is adjourned.